Morning. It is Tuesday morning. Time for a recap of last night's D&D. Things went roughly as I expected. The group had some very good rolls on the encounter chart. Encountered a storm in the distance, which luckily got nowhere near them. Basically, when they encountered a storm on the chart, I then rolled a direction to find out if it was going to be in their path or if it was going to be heading towards them. The answer ended up being no on both counts. So they saw it, and nothing came of it. They then ended up with 2 days of clear sailing. This is in part because of the fact that they have a ranger in the group who is actively trying to do things to limit their encounters. So because he's doing that actively, I'm giving him a roll each day, and if he beats the DC that I have set for that day, which does vary. It's not a set DC, depending on where they are and what's going on in the vicinity. That DC does vary, anywhere from 12 up to 20. But if he meets the DC for that day, then instead of just rolling on the encounter chart, I roll 2, or if he beats it by a lot, I might even roll 3 times, and I will choose the most favorable of the encounters for the group. If he completely botches the roll, just really badly, like 5 or less, then I might roll twice and pick the worst encounter, because he's actively misled them. If he rolls a 1, I might even roll 3 times and pick the worst. So, I'm allowing a bit of active control in the destiny, but active control can be both positive and negative. So, storm, clear sailing, everything was going well, and then sails on the horizon. I mentioned this yesterday, that they were going to sight the tribe that attacked the frost pelts, sorry. And they did. Now, this was quite interesting because they sighted 3 boats, a war canoe, a voyager, and a smaller canoe. I've forgotten the name of the small canoe now. Outrigger. And originally, only the outrigger turned course to check them out, basically. And then Madman decided to summon a storm around them. Now, here's the thing. Madman thought that summoning a storm would intimidate them into running away. But when you have people who are raiders and warriors by profession, and someone starts posturing just because you're nearby, what that says to them is, you've got something worth taking. So all of the boats turned and moved towards them. Combat ensued. The storm did make things awkward for a while. It was giving disadvantage to the war canoe's ballista, but it was also giving disadvantage to the ranger's arrows and the wizard's ranged attack spells and basically everything the party was trying to do. The boats closed on them, subject to some really poor navigation rolls. Really poor navigation rolls. The voyaging canoe fell behind. It could not keep up. And the war canoe and the outrigger both actually found themselves in very unfavorable conditions. As things progressed, the outrigger eventually got itself into such a poor position that it was far enough back that it could actually see the state of the enemy versus the war canoe, saw that it didn't look great, so they turned and left. They decided to catch up to the voyaging canoe and move on. The war canoe, though, well, they were berserkers. They decided to stick it out. And they continued fighting. And they eventually got close enough, and eventually the shaman's storm was dispelled when he basically got told by Bob that he was doing more harm, that the storm was harming them. Bob actually thought that the storm had been cast on them by the enemy. It was harming them that badly. He thought it was actively working against them. And they continued fighting. They eventually set the war canoe on fire with their attacks. It kept burning for a few rounds, the fire was growing and spreading, and at some point, the berserkers, realizing that the battle was not going well, started basically spreading the fire on their own boat and laughing as they did it. And it was at the point that the berserkers started spreading the fire that the group decided, oh wait, no, we want that canoe, and if we burn it down, we can't have it. I don't necessarily think that they had realized that up until that point, when they were throwing various kinds of fire at the boat. Fire is not normally something you use if you plan to salvage. So, during all of this, our lone wolf did manage to fail a athletics check jumping across part of the boat and end up in the ocean once again. He managed to grab onto one of the boats being towed behind as they traveled and pull himself back up and in. But that was a source of lots of laughing and hands and heads. And as the session ended, one of the berserkers, who was, as they got close enough to realize, nearly covered in blood, actually put his hands into the fire and was engulfed in flames, changing into some kind of fire golem, fire elemental, fire creature, we'll say. They don't really know what he is. They just know that now there is a fire creature standing on the boat that is on fire that they wanted to take. Within the action as well, there were a couple people that they managed to knock off the boat through magical means, who are now swimming towards their boat. So that's where we left off, and that's where we will pick up next week. Overall, a interesting action-packed section. This game has been heavily combat-driven, and it will be interesting to see next week or the week after, once we get to the next piece of land. I won't necessarily say civilization yet, but the next piece of land, and see how they transition back out of a combat mode into doing some other things. So I'm looking forward to that, and we'll see how things go. I'll be back tomorrow with another topic. If you've got any suggested topics, drop me a message below. I've got a few things, but I'm always interested in more. Like if you liked the video, subscribe if you want to see when I put something new up. If you want an announcement, click that bell. And until then, try to have a lovely week.